Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Babylonia, which is a 2019 release board game designed by Reiner Knizia. This one accommodates 2 to 4 players and according to the box takes 60 minutes to play, but I would say it's a bit quicker than that in reality. So if you're familiar with other Reiner Knizia tile placement games such as Through the Desert or Blue Lagoon, this one has some similarities to a game like that where you are putting tiles onto the board, trying to connect things, trying to make routes and get points in different ways. So with a lot of Knizia games as well, I don't want to go on too much about this, but the rules themselves are really easy to understand and to comprehend, and it really is a matter of taking one of 2 rather simple decisions. So as you can see from the board here, I've dotted all these different cities and farms out, cities being these buildings here, or these hexes with these different symbols on, and the farms being these ones here. And we've got different islands, as you can see, and depending on the player count, some of those islands are going to be shut off, but I've got everything open here as if it was a 4-player game. Also on some of these blue hexes here, you've got these ziggurats, which are basically these temples, which can be important later. And I've set up some tokens here already, but just ignore that. That's just going to be used for examples later. So at the start of the game or throughout the game, you're always going to have 5 tokens available to you at any time. And those tokens are going to match the different cities. You've got these stars, you've got these jars, or these vases, I suppose, and you've also got these noble tiles as well, and they are called noble tiles in their entirety. And you've also got these farmers. Now these farmers are useful because they let you travel around the board a bit quicker than normal. So one of those two actions you can take is to lay 2 tiles onto the board wherever you want. So for example, I could put this one here like this, and I could put this one, let's say, over here like this. Now they don't have to be connected, but you will get bonuses if they are connected for different reasons. The second action you can take, and bear in mind I would replenish my hand and let's say it went right around the table, is to play the farmers. Now when you play farmers, you can play as many farmers as you possibly can or want to at a certain time, like so. So you can play 3 or more, getting around that 2 tile rule, and place them onto the board like this. So let's talk about how you're actually going to get your points and why you're placing them onto the board in the first place. So the simplest way to get points is by collecting these farm tiles like this. And when you do that, you're going to have an adjacent token already placed onto the board, and then you're going to have to place a farmer onto that token like so in order to collect that many victory points. So in this example, this white player would get 5 victory points. So rather simple. Not all farmer tokens strictly give straight up points like these ones. Some of them have these blue squares on them, and when you collect those blue square farmer tiles, you're going to get a number of points equal to the number of buildings you have in front of you. So let's explain how you acquire buildings. So these city tokens are going to be divided out whenever a city is completely surrounded by tokens. So for example, let's say on his turn, the blue player places this star token here. And as you can see, this city is now completely surrounded, at least in terms of its landmass. Now, whenever that's done, the player with the most tokens surrounding that building or that city is going to get the city, but before that happens, a scoring is going to trigger. Now, this is where the symbols come into play. So whenever you do surround a building, you're going to have a look at the symbols on that city. So for example, here you've got the vase and you've got the star. Then each player is going to score 2 points for every matching symbol either connected to or surrounding that city. So for example here, the blue player only has 1 matching star because their little network ends here, but the white player has a jar, and it also, you can trace the route through to this star here and to even this jar here. So they would actually get 6 points for that action. Then the building token or the city token is removed from the board and placed in front of the player who controlled it. So in this example, the white player would get the city, and they would score a number of points equal to the number of cities, not only including this one, but the ones they've also acquired beforehand. And that's going to apply to all the players as well. So every single player is going to score for each city they have in front of them. The final thing to consider are these ziggurats here. So whenever a ziggurat is completely surrounded, again by landmass, then let's say for example like this, then much like the cities, the majority is going to be counted. So in this example, the grey player has 4 tokens surrounding it, the white player only has 1. If there was ever one in the water, Then while that wouldn't contribute towards kind of triggering the ziggurat being scored, but it would count towards the majority of that ziggurat. And I should say as well, whenever you place a token in the water, that token will go face down because the symbol isn't going to count. Now, whenever a ziggurat is completely surrounded, then something else is going to happen. The player with the majority is going to be able to take one of these unique abilities by drafting one of these tokens here, or these tiles. And they do lots of different things, such as giving you 10 points straight up. Whenever you score your cities, you get an additional one for each pair you have. Whenever you can place a noble token straight onto a farm, even if you've not got a connecting token next to it. Whenever you place 3 farmers, you can also place a noble token. You can place 3 different noble tokens on a single turn. Your rat can now hold 7 tokens. You can take an additional turn whenever you like. And you've got these advanced tokens as well, should you choose to use them, which means that all the sea mass is going to count as a connecting area for you, or the middle island is going to count as a connected area for you. So even if I had a token here, and here, I could follow all the track round and maybe even connect it to here without having to place those tokens. So those ones are really powerful, but are kind of considered as a bit of an option should you want to play with them. And that's going to be how the game's going to play out until somebody has used all of their tokens, which is going to trigger the end game immediately. And then whoever's got the most victory points is going to be the winner. So let's talk about how I feel about Babylonia. The mechanisms in Babylonia are ultra simple, and that's a pretty natural thing to assume in Reiner Knizia games. I think sometimes we take for granted how well he streamlines his designs, and Babylonia is another perfect example of that, just taking one of two rather simple decisions, placing a couple of tokens onto the board, but if you've got those farmers, you can place as many as you want. And that's pretty much all it is to it. So in terms of explaining your actions, this game is going to be extremely easy to communicate to anybody, and the rules overhead is so easy to digest. The scoring, I suppose, is a little bit different to some of his other games, where you are obviously not only getting points by surrounding these cities and getting the city tokens, which are going to compound as the game goes on, but as you take those cities, you want to be careful as well what other people have, because whenever you take a city, they're also going to score for all of their cities as well. So you could be awarding your opponents quite a bit of points should you start to take those actions when you know your opponents have a lot more cities than you do. The scoring of these city tokens prior to actually taking them, I think, is great, because you can create some really great networks here that spread halfway across the board, or you can really diversify and pick and choose the exact buildings you want to take. So there is that network building element to this game, which comes along really strongly. And because of the hex design, people are going to be fighting over certain spots and blocking you off, making you have to go around and connect your routes in different ways. Or, of course, you can just completely start somewhere else. So you're not limited to just expanding where you are initially. You can place anywhere at all on the board. And that does stretch you in some quite interesting ways, because if you've got a big cluster of cities together, you might want to be placing some vases in these areas so you can connect them all. But at the same time, you might want to just completely make a burst for the farm tokens and get a legs up that way and just get a quick snatch of points. But while you're doing that, other people are probably investing in their networks, which could come back and haunt you later because you haven't built that infrastructure. So I love the way the point gathering is rather simple, but at the same time, it's pretty polarizing in terms of what you can do. And to do one thing, you're going to have to sacrifice another. Are you going to sacrifice a few things and sacrifice getting points from the get-go in order to surround one of these ziggurats so that you can get a player power to start with, which can hopefully pay off in terms of the investment you've put in? And these are all really interesting, and they're all worth having. Are you going to take a big snatch of points if you're falling behind? Are you going to go for a real city collecting strategy? Are you going to try and just get a nice ongoing player power by being able to place more tokens from round to round, or even just having the flexibility to have more tokens in your rack at any time? And all these things are so worth considering. And because you only get 2 actions, as I said, to do one thing, you're going to have to sacrifice another. And it's about taking advantage of what other people are doing and taking that space where people would probably go to and prioritizing what you're going to do as well. The balance of the game is close to perfect. The only thing that I suppose could be have a slight criticism is that you are subject to the tokens you're going to have on your rack at any time. However, there are only, I think there's 4 different types. You've got the farmers and the 3 different types of nobles. So if you don't have a particular type of noble that you really wanted, it doesn't really matter because there are so many other opportunities out there to go for. So I don't think this is a game you are going to complain or you're going to be thrown under the bus in terms of the tiles you're drawing and the tiles you have available to you. It really is completely flexible, and I think the best player is always going to win on this game by carefully prioritizing the actions they're going to take. So I think the balance in this game is absolutely fantastic, and it is borderline abstract. As you can probably tell, this isn't a thematic game. It is a game with pretty clear information on what you're going to do, trying to block people, trying to prioritize which actions you can take, get the cities, connect things, and the rules themselves are perfectly balanced, apart from the odd occasion where you might not have the tile that you particularly want. But again, there are lots of ways to get around that. The time investment, I think this game is fantastic. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, the box does say 60 minutes. I would strongly say this game does not take that long, and I think in the worst case scenario, it might take that long if you've got maybe a 4-player game with a couple of AP prone players. But on the whole, this game is so snappy. You're just smashing a bunch of tokens down. Sometimes you'll be triggering a scoring, which can be a bit of calculation in terms of mapping your networks and stuff, particularly at the end of the game when more sophisticated networks are set up and you've got these long, extravagant chains. But for 75% of the game, the scoring is going to be so snappy, and there's not much downtime, and it does fly by in terms of how long this game takes. You've not got that many tokens. You've got a bunch of tokens here, and of course the ones I've got on the board. And of course, if you're playing farmers, sometimes you're putting 4 tokens down as a single action. So, yeah, certainly doesn't outstay its welcome. In fact, it really does hit a sweet spot in being so easy to get to the table, and quite a meaty and thinky game to get played in half an hour or so. So I think that is really great in terms of its time investment and in terms of the uptime and decisions that go into that as well. The replayability, you have got different things you can choose. Of course, from round to round or from game to game, the setup is going to be different. Yes, you have got allocated spots where the buildings go to, but the order in which they're placed is going to completely change the feel of the game and create different opportunities from setup to setup. You can also go for different powers each time you want to play to take a different strategy that way. And are you going to go for the ziggurats? Are you going to try and collect cities? Are you going to try and invest your network? Are you going to try and spread out and get all the opportunities that way? And all of these are going to pull you in different directions to try different things. And I think it does strike a great balance of being tactical while still having quite a strategic element to this game as well. So, if you are more of a tactical player, this is going to be for you. But also, if you do like that hint of strategy and long-term planning, this one is also going to find you're also going to find this game quite satisfying. In terms of the player interaction, this is, there is some fierce competition around these borders, or around surrounding these tokens, and getting all the different tokens onto the board, building a network. You can cut people off, and sometimes you're just doing that passively. You want to be careful about the opportunities in which you're letting your opponents sneak into certain cities and try and attach it to their network, because if you've really invested in a network and you've nearly surrounded it and someone just managed to sneak in there and attach it to theirs, they're also going to get the benefit when that city is scored. So it really is just as much about helping yourself as it is trying to block other people off, which I find that fascinating. And, despite it being relatively cutthroat, it doesn't feel like it's a nasty game, and it feels like you're just doing what's best for you and not just spiting the other players for the sake of it. So it's got a great integration of player interaction here, just passively as well as intentionally. Aesthetically, I think this game looks wonderful. There's something about this board that really does it for me. I think it has a real sophisticated look to it. I think it looks really good and quite striking, to be honest. The components themselves are really good as well. So you've got the player tokens themselves are these wood tokens, which are really good quality. They're going to hold up really well. The printing on them is really nice and durable, and I think it does have a certain appeal to it, and it really pops when it's on the board. These tokens as well are really nice and easy to see what they are. The farm tokens are in the same vein, really. The temples are, they're a bit superfluous, but it's nice to have some nice wooden pieces on the board. My only complaint, and it's a small complaint, is these tile racks in the first place. They don't hold the tokens particularly well, but they are quite easy to, or it's quite an easy solution to fix that problem by sticking these rubber feet onto the tile racks, and that'll just give it just a few millimeters to stand up and for those tokens to sit in nicely like they do here, because otherwise they are quite prone to just falling over a bit and feeling a bit loose. But other than that, I'm really impressed with the production of this game, and even the player powers. They could have been cards easily, but they've made nice thick tiles here for those player powers. So it's going to hold up to repeated plays, and it's a nice durable production. The theme of the game, is pretty much non-existent. It's a borderline abstract game, but placing tokens onto the board. You're going to be completely getting blood out of a stone if you want any theme from this game, but I suppose you can expect that going into a game like this. And the setup and teardown time as well is pretty easy. You are just drafting or drawing a bunch of these tiles out of the bag and putting them all on the allocated spaces. But because it's so random, it's not fiddly at all. You can get it done pretty quickly. Giving each player all their tokens, putting the ziggurats onto the board, and then you are ready to go. And because the rules explanation can be done in just a few minutes, that's also going to really help in terms of getting it to the table and getting it set up and getting ready to play, really. The sense of progression in the game is fantastic because, as I said, it's all about building those networks. Initially you might have clusters all over the board, but as the game goes on, you're starting to connect them and trying to chain things together. And sometimes you can spread things all the way across the board where, if you've got a city that scores here, you might have a network that spreads all the way past all these different cities and can get a big chain and big points from whenever they are triggered to be scored. This game is fantastic. It is wonderfully designed, and while this designer has been around for a long time, he's still putting out great designs, extremely elegant, smooth play that's, to be honest, extremely versatile, because this game is deep. There are a lot of decisions that are going to pull you in different ways. Prioritizing things is going to be where the gameplay really lies. Are you going to snatch something before your opponent does? Can you afford to wait a turn or two before investing in something? And all that comes together just in a wonderful package. So easy to teach to new players as well. But again, so deep, so much strategy, tactical decisions. You've got to manage your hand of tokens. When are you going to do them? Are you going to go over here and try and grab something over here? Are you going to try and add to your network? Are you going to deliberately try and block someone off? All these things are important things to weigh up from turn to turn, and that being boiled down into two rather simple actions is fascinating to me. And with the addition of these player powers as well, these just add a bit more spice to the game, a bit more flavour, and they all seem really well balanced as well. I'm not sure if I'd always play with these two advanced tiles. I think they could be a bit game breakery, but I'm perfectly happy with just the basic ones. So overall, if you like your Knizia games, you like these simple abstract style area control and network route building games, then this is probably the best example of that I've played. Fantastic game. I can't really say enough about it. It's going to stay in my collection, and I think this one is really going to stand the test of time because it is so pure, but the decisions are strong. So that concludes my thoughts on Babylonia. A fantastic game. If you have enjoyed the review, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.